Today we're diving deep into some really compelling material. It explores edge runners, archaic selection theory, and kindness as, well, a disruptive force.
Really fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into the feedback. Our first area, it's about this edge runner concept. Your material makes a strong case for why, embracing this path helps with survival, adaptability, especially against these engineered realities you talk about.
Right.
But while emphasizing departing from norms is powerful, we think its articulation could be stronger. Maybe by emphasizing conscious integration, not just operating out on the fringes.
That's a really key distinction, yeah. Because focusing only on the departure, well, it risks being seen as just isolated rebellion.
Or worse.
Or even madness, like McKenna warned, right? And that could sort of obscure the deeper, the integrated purpose of this path for others who might actually benefit.
Exactly. The focus on running the edges for getting into reality and survival, that's clear. But how it helps society positively, that link could be much more explicit.
So it's not just about pushing back.
I agree. It's more about building a new way to engage. So our suggestion is this. Clarify how edge running works as a pathway to individuation, becoming your whole self, and higher consciousness.
That Jungian idea.
Precisely. That makes it a model for overcoming not just external control, but also internal fragmentation. And that naturally influences broader society.
So framing it as uniting opposites within yourself to achieve wholeness?
Yes, rather than just seeing it as defiance.
Absolutely. And we could get concrete here. Like instead of just running the edges, maybe articulate the edge runner as more of a generalist species type. Thriving in change, surviving extinction events.
That directly links individual adaptability to the collective resilience the material hints at. Yeah.
And building on that, what if we also stressed that the goal isn't only resisting the monstrous nothing of the public, but actively working to integrate unconscious stuff, confronting the shadow?
Right, that internal work.
Because that internal psychological work is what really leads to a new equilibrium. It shows how it empowers external engagement directly.
Good point.
And maybe another way, illustrate how differentiating yourself from collective projections through this edge running, how that leads directly to, say, humility and a genuine fear of the abysmal depths in man.
Which in turn fosters a more accurate understanding of self and others. It reduces misinterpretations in society. These examples give really concrete links between personal growth and better social dynamics.
Those are really insightful ways to refine that core idea. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Your material connects RK selection theory, life strategies based on reproduction, environment, to wider societal observations.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned rumination in poverty-stricken areas, the whole nature versus nurture thing. Our feedback here is that the discussion could be, more robust, maybe by detailing the complex hybrid nature of these traits and how they interact dynamically with engineered reality and nurture.
That makes a lot of sense. Because right now there's maybe a slight risk of implying a purely biological link.
A deterministic one almost.
Yeah, between our selected folks and systemic issues, especially in those areas prone to rumination. And that could overshadow the huge role of engineered environments and, epigenetic issues, how environment affects genes in shaping behavior.
And it overshadows the complex mix of traits we see in things like the dark triad.
Exactly. We need to be careful not to suggest biology is the only thing driving it.
Precisely. We want to avoid any hint of simplistic cause and effect. So to strengthen this, maybe expand on how engineered social landscapes and constant stress can influence how R or K-selected behaviors show up, and how that contributes to societal stagnation.
Moving beyond just correlation.
Yes, towards a more integrated kind of biopsychosocial view, highlighting the nuanced synthesis of traits, not just keeping them separate. It's not about keeping R's and K's apart, right? It's seeing how they interact.
Absolutely. Like when discussing the dark triad, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, we could explicitly spell out how these traits are a synthesis.
A blend of both?
Yeah, of our selected strategies, like immediate gratification, low empathy, and K-selected ones, like long-term planning, social navigation, getting resources.
Okay, interesting.
We could give specific examples of how case-selected cognitive skills, like calculated planning or keen social intelligence, get sort of appropriated and distorted for selfish manipulation. That shows the complex hybrid nature you mentioned.
Right, not just purely R or K.
And connecting back to rumination in poverty areas, link it not just to maybe more R-selected individuals, but also to how an environment saturated with, say, low-quality info and addictive feedback loops.
That behavioral sink idea.
Exactly. How that sink, that degradation from overcrowding and stress, can actually degrade complex social behaviors and inhibit case-selected thinking, like nuance and complexity.
It actively suppresses it.
Right. And finally, reinforce the nature versus nurture point by citing things like epigenetic markers, transgenerational trauma, as concrete ways that constant stress in these engineered realities can deeply influence the nurture side.
Perpetuating stagnation.
Yeah, rather than just implying biology is the whole story. Adding these layers creates a much richer, more complete picture of how environment shapes behavior.
It really underscores how much control can be exerted through those engineered realities, doesn't it? Which leads perfectly into our next point. This radical idea of spontaneous, irresponsible kindness to beat societal control.
It's a very creative concept.
Exceptionally creative, yeah. And its power, we think, can be amplified by weaving in insights about how real transformation overcomes psychological resistance and the trap of just, imitation.
That's a powerful core idea. The Cash App example you mentioned, every adult sending just $1, totaling millions, that really shows the collective potential, powerfully.
It's staggering when you think about it.
But the material could maybe benefit from tackling the inherent psychological barriers. Why don't people just do that kind of widespread, non-transactional thing?
Good question.
There's a risk, without acknowledging the resistance of the unconscious, or our tendency towards imitation over true individuation, that the proposal might seem a bit idealistic.
Or easily co-opted.
Exactly. How do we make sure these acts are genuinely disruptive?
That's a critical point, and it gets right at how we actually beat societal control. So to make this more compelling, maybe frame these random acts of kindness in a deeper psychological context.
How so?
Emphasize that their real disruptive power isn't just unpredictability. It's their ability to trigger authentic individuation, even self-sacrifice, challenging that passive, stultified state of the mass man on a really deep level.
Like giving someone a taste, a chance to shift their whole perspective?
Exactly. It's that jolt out of the system.
Okay, yeah. So, for instance, when advocating for these acts, maybe clearly distinguish between just surface-level imitation or a pose, and the deeper transformative mystery of self-sacrifice that leads to real individuation.
Getting beyond the performance.
Suggesting the true rebellion is internal first, overcoming our own cherished illusions, so something deeper, fairer, more embracing can emerge. That's where that irresponsible amount of help you mentioned comes in, dropping the ego, truly aiming to change a situation.
And connecting that to the RK ideas?
We could highlight how these acts inject K-selected thought, that high-quality, empathy-driven interaction, right into the behavioral sink, actively countering the dopamine loops of low-quality R-selected information.
So kindness has a concrete psychological mechanism for disruption.
Exactly. And finally, acknowledge that while these acts are maybe unquantifiable, they still face resistance from the unconscious. Psychic energy, as Jung might say, is a very fastidious thing which insists on fulfillment of its own conditions.
It's not easy.
No. So suggest that true transformation needs continuous, conscious engagement, not just one-off acts. Frame each kindness as part of a larger, ongoing inner work that literally cannot be controlled or regulated by external systems.
Those suggestions really show how random kindness isn't just a nice gesture, but a profound strategy for systemic change. Which brings us to our final critique. You mentioned wanting to differentiate this message from other wackos.
A very understandable concern.
And needing to be sure of what we know. Your material shows sharp awareness of societal control, knowledge, power. And its important message can gain wider acceptance by actively showing strategies for, let's call it epistemic differentiation, resisting common cognitive biases.
That's a fascinating and really practical point. The discussion right now kind of assumes a shared reality, doesn't it?
It does, implicitly.
But without explicitly addressing the fragileness of knowing and common psychological misconceptions, the message could risk being dismissed by people operating under different assumptions about how we know things.
How do we make sure our own understanding isn't reading to misguided advice or criticism?
Right. We need a framework to help listeners evaluate information for themselves, to build that confidence in what they know.
Precisely. To make the message more robust, more resilient to skepticism. Integrate a discussion on how to critically evaluate information, how to distinguish solid insights from pseudoscience or just desperate assumptions.
Grounding the claims.
Yeah, grounding your powerful claims in a framework that resonates with a modern intellectual conscience. And giving the listener tools so they don't just become another cog in the system they recognized.
Excellent. So some concrete examples. Maybe explicitly discuss Foucault's insight, knowledge and power being intertwined, how institutional communication works through rules about who gets to speak.
And then connect that too.
Explain how these unplanned acts of kindness operate outside that matrix. That gives a theoretical basis for their disruptive power, a way around established narratives.
Circumventing the control structure.
Second, introduce naive realism, that belief that the world is exactly as we see it. Show how that leads to misguided advice. Maybe suggest using refutation approaches.
How would that work?
You activate the common misconception, like it's all about race or money, and then clearly explain why it's wrong based on the deeper systemic issues you're discussing.
Directly addressing those surface-level beliefs.
Exactly. And lastly, tackle our tendency for patternicity or apophenia, seeing meaningful patterns in random noise, like the face on Mars thing.
Seeing connections that aren't there.
Right. Recommend adopting a more scientific mindset. Build models rather than holding rigid beliefs. Be ready to throw the model out if new dimensions appear. It's a way to avoid ideological closure and boost intellectual humility. Helps listeners tell solid understanding from, just speculation.
So today, we've looked at several concrete ways to strengthen these compelling ideas. We talked about sharpening the edge runner concept through integration,
Deepening the interplay of arc selection and engineered environments, fortifying kindness as rebellion with psychological depth.
and boosting epistemic robustness to really differentiate your message.
We really encourage you to reflect on these suggestions, keep up this vital work, and we absolutely invite you to resubmit your refined material to us again in the future.